Okay. All right, everyone. Good morning. And thank you to Anne for the invitation to come speak to you all today about aural rehabilitation, which we're going to be shortening to AR. And that phrase, aural rehabilitation, might sound a little clinical, but the idea is very practical. And to start off with some disclosures, so I am an associate professor at California State University, Sacramento. I've been here for just over 8 years, and a big part of my role since joining and today is to direct the Doctor of Audiology program. The Doctor of Audiology program is the doctoral program for the training of doctors of audiology or audiologists.
Laura, we have a question. Your face
sure.
is dark. Is there any way that you can place a light on your face to help us with speech reading?
Yes, let me adjust my video here, and then I can also put the light on in the room. Okay, is that better?
A little bit, thank you.
Okay, let me put the light on here on the wall. Okay. Is that better now?
Yeah, we're dimming the lights in the room.
Okay.
Go ahead, keep going, Laura.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And I'm also involved with a number of professional committees and organizations in audiology, as well as HLAA California. And I currently serve as the secretary for the current board. And I'm also on an accreditation commission for audiology education. In terms of my own teaching and research at the university, I'm interested in aural rehabilitation with older adults, as well as issues that affect underrepresented populations when accessing audiology or hearing healthcare services. And so I am here today to talk about AR, or aural rehabilitation, and these other topics. Communication strategies. Anne said you all are very interested in some smartphone apps, and I heard mention of some accessibility features with the Apple Store, so I think I'll be speaking to a well-versed audience in that regard. We're going to do a little bit of interaction with lip reading and clear speech. And then at the end, I'm going to talk to you about going to your audiologist and asking about AR. So AR is essentially about helping people with hearing loss be able to communicate more effectively in their everyday life. So we are not just going to talk about hearing aids or cochlear implants, although those are important. We are going to talk about the things that happen around the technology. So communication strategies, smartphone apps, clear speech, lip reading, how to talk to your audiologist about what is working and what is still difficult. We're also going to emphasize that having difficulty communicating does not mean that you are doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that you are not trying hard enough. Essentially, with hearing loss, it changes the way speech comes in to our ears and our brain. And that makes those everyday listening situations really challenging. Restaurants, phone calls, group conversations, people talking from other rooms, someone speaking quickly when there's background noise. And so the goal of today is not to give you some long list of rules or things to do. It's really about giving you some practical tools and information that you can use. Some of these are strategies that you can do yourself. Some are things that you'll want to involve your family, your friends, or your communication partners. And then some are things that you're going to want to ask your audiologist about. And as we go through today's presentation, I really encourage you to think about one or two real situations in your own lives where communication is difficult. Maybe it's hearing grandchildren. Maybe it's hearing someone in the car. The example I'm going to give later is ordering at a drive-through. Maybe it's going to a doctor's appointment. Whatever it is, keep that situation in your mind because the strategies and tools that we're going to talk about today will be the most useful when you connect them and then are able to apply them in your day-to-day life. So we'll start off here with just a note about technology. So hearing aids, cochlear implants, they can help access sound, but they don't necessarily make that listening situation easy. They can do a lot. They can help you hear speech more clearly. They can help you reconnect with the environment that you might have been missing. And for many people, it can make a big difference. But it's also important to be realistic. They do not restore hearing to normal, which means they don't automatically make every listening situation easy. Okay, you can still have trouble in background noise, and that's one of the most common complaints. So you might hear well in a quiet room, but then struggle in a family gathering or at a restaurant or when you have several people talking at once. And phone calls, for example, can be difficult because you're losing the visual cues. And just like we were trying to troubleshoot here, you may not be able to see the person's face as well, their mouth movements, or their gestures. And if someone says, oh, I have hearing aids, that is still not necessarily going to mean that all the situations then are addressed. People are still going to have trouble in those situations, and it's not unusual. So it doesn't mean that the hearing aids are bad. It just means the situation requires more than just amplification of sound. And that's where these strategies, the environmental changes, assistive technology, apps, and support from your communication partners can come in. And that is what we're going to talk about today with AR. So the goals of AR is, if you notice here, not to perfect hearing. That's a really important point. So if we are going to define success as I'm going to hear every word perfectly in every situation, then everyone is going to feel disappointed. Instead, the goals are much more practical and meaningful. One of the goals is better communication. So that might mean understanding more of a conversation, knowing how to repair communication breakdowns, or being able to participate in situations that used to feel too difficult. Another is less listening effort. Many people with hearing loss describe feeling tired after listening all day. And that makes sense because if your brain is having to work harder to fill in missing pieces, listening becomes more effortful. And AR can help reduce that effort by improving the environment, using better strategies, and then helping others communicate more clearly. Another one is confidence. Hearing loss can make you hesitate. You might avoid asking a question because you're worried you missed something. You might stop going to certain places because it feels too hard. You might smile and nod, even when you're not sure what was being said. And so AR can help you feel more prepared, more in control of the situation. Stronger relationships is another goal. Hearing loss doesn't just affect the person with hearing loss, it affects everyone in the family. So spouses, communication partners, friends, coworkers, caregivers, family members. Misunderstandings can happen and frustration can build. And when everybody knows what can help, communication then can become less stressful. And then finally, AR is also about getting more participation in daily life. So going out to eat, attending groups like this, enjoying your family gatherings, participating in worship services, making phone calls, and feeling more comfortable at medical appointments. So when we talk about AR, we are really talking about quality of life. We're asking, what would help you communicate more easily, feel less exhausted, and stay connected to the people and activities that matter to you? And so that brings us to the first one, which is communication difficulties. So when communication breaks down, it is very common for people to blame themselves. So you might think, oh, I should have heard that, or I'm slowing everyone down. And maybe you have others around you thinking, oh, they're not listening to me, or I already said it 3 times. But communication is not just about one person. Communication is a two-way street, meaning there are several pieces working together. First, we have the talker. Is the person speaking clearly? Are they facing the listener, which would be you? Are they talking from another room? Are they speaking too quickly? Do they have a soft voice? Are they covering their mouth or looking away? Second is the listener. So this would be you. You could also, in addition to having hearing loss, be tired, distracted, stressed, unfamiliar with the topic. And listening can be harder when the topic in a conversation changes quickly or when you don't have enough context. Third is the message itself. Some messages are really easy to predict. We're going to talk about the importance of context today. Other messages can be harder. Names, numbers, dates, medication instructions, directions, and unfamiliar words are much harder to fill in if part of the message is missed. And then fourth is the environment. Is there background noise? Is the lighting poor? Is the room echoey? Is the speaker far away? Is a television on in the background? Are there multiple people talking at once? And when you look at it this way, it's helpful because it means that we have more than one place to intervene. It is not just all the responsibility on the person with hearing loss. We can change the way the talker communicates. We can change our environment. We can clarify the message. We can use technology. We can use repair strategies. So instead of asking, why can't I hear? Ask, what part of this situation is making communication harder and what can we change? And so there are 2 steps for choosing a strategy. The first is to identify the problem. So these are examples here, but if you look at these, it seems really obvious, but this is often the first step that we're skipping. We just go straight to, I can't hear, this is too hard. But if we can identify what's making the situation difficult, then we can choose a solution. So for example, background noise, poor lighting, distance, the size of the group, your own fatigue, maybe a lack of motivation to understand what someone's saying. The key thing here is that we're really specific. The goal as we present these strategies is not to use every strategy all the time. The goal is to match the strategy to the problem. And doing so will help the communication environment be much more manageable. And so these are some of the strategies that we can use here. So choosing a quieter place to sit can help reduce the background noise. Sitting where you can see people's faces can help with lip reading. You can ask for better seating, and I see that you all are sitting up at the front of the room, which is great. Setting some ground rules for one person speaking at a time, using technology and apps when needed, and we're going to cover that next. And then checking in about what works and what doesn't. So sometimes we assume a strategy is helping when it's not. So you might have a family member who is thinking they're helping by speaking louder, but maybe you actually need them to slow down or to face you or to speak more clearly. And today we're going to do clear speech instruction to help with that as well. So for example, we can tailor these for strategies at home. This seems really simple, but one of the most helpful strategies is getting the person's attention before speaking. So if someone starts talking while you're looking away, doing the dishes, reading, watching TV, you might miss even the first few words. And oftentimes those first few words is what is giving you the context for what's being said. Another phrase I like is walk before you talk. This means that if you want to say something to someone with hearing loss, walk into the room first. Don't call from another room. How many times have you been, for example, in the kitchen doing the dishes and somebody is talking to you from another room and there's just a lot of yelling back and forth? We need to stop calling from another room. We don't want to talk while we're walking away. Don't start the conversation from behind. Anne had mentioned at the beginning, getting within that critical distance, 6 feet. Get close enough, get their attention, and then speak. Reducing background noise, another major strategy. Turn off that TV. Put it on mute. Lower the music. Close the door. Move away from those noisy appliances. Seeing faces matters too. So visual information can help fill in the gaps, and that's why seating can help and good lighting. And then repeat or rephrase. So always try one repetition first before rephrasing it. And we'll go through an example of that in a moment. So in groups or in restaurants, choosing quieter places when possible. This might mean you're sitting away from the background noise. So in a restaurant, asking for a quieter table, maybe away from the kitchen or away from the entrance, away from the bar. Doing things like that requires you to plan ahead, but it can make a big difference. Also, sitting within a booth rather than an open table can help because the booth can help keep the sound in your area. For the round table, that helps being able to see, again, the visual cues for the people you're talking with. Avoid sitting in front of a bright window behind the speaker so you don't have shadows on the face. And then you can use assistive technology. So like your remote microphones, some of the captioning, speech to text apps that we're going to talk about today, your phone accessibility features, hearing loops, those can all help in these kinds of situations as well. To start off, I want to share this app, which is called SoundPrint. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but SoundPrint is like a Yelp where it is a sound level and awareness app. So this helps people identify quieter places. So you can use this if restaurants or public spaces are challenging. Sometimes just knowing that a location is quieter at certain times of the day can help. And so you can go look at the restaurants around you, see what the noise levels are, and then choose a restaurant there. So that brings us to smartphones, which are very useful for communication. They're not perfect. They're not going to replace hearing care, but they do give you more options in difficult situations. So these are the built-in accessibility features for both Apple and Android. And I've broken these up to two different groups depending on the type of phone you have. But these can include live captions, hearing device connectivity, sound recognition, options to route sounds to your hearing aids or earbuds. And many people often don't realize that these features are already on your smartphone. There's also one to highlight for those of you with Apple devices as well, which allows for real-time text, where you can use that to reach 911 if you have text to 911 available in your area. And there is a website you can go on, text911.info, and that can let you know based on your zip code if you have that service available to you. This is an example of what the live captions feature looks like on the Apple devices. The QR codes that you see here will take you to the links for either Apple or Android devices for the features and how you can step by step enable them on your device. So for those of you with an iPhone, an Apple device has to be the operating system 11 or newer. This is the code that you can scan. There's also a sound recognition feature on iPhone. This feature is really helpful and it has a slight advantage over the Android devices because it can be assigned to non-custom sounds, meaning sounds that you can set and program beyond the traditional alerts that you would get with the iPhone. The Android ones are more pre-programmed, but you can set this to alert you to any sounds in your environment, like running water or doorbell, for example, or baby crying. So this is just for iPhone. For Android, this is the QR code that you can scan if you have an Android phone for instructions on how to access the Apple accessibility features. And then here is where you can get those sound notifications on Android. The picture here is showing an example of what that notification looks like. Here are a number of captioning and transcription apps. There's, of course, Caption Call and In a Caption, but I wanted to share some other ones. So there's NAL Scribe, Otter AI, Live Transcribe, Text Here, Negish, and Ava. And these apps can provide text support during conversation, meetings, appointments, or phone calls. They vary in cost and accuracy and privacy features and ease of use. So it's really worth trying a few out and seeing what works best for this situation. I'm not here to tell you this is the one you should use. The best app is the one that you use. So try these out, see which ones are going to work the best for you. It might involve some trial and error, but this can help with being able to have that access through your smartphone. For those of you with tinnitus, there are also apps. This is one I'm including here called Odo. It has education, sound therapy, and coping strategies in it. So although we're not talking about tinnitus primarily today, they can be helpful for people with hearing loss as part of a broader management plan. There's also auditory training, which is the last category that we're going to cover. These websites are Heroes and Lace AI Pro, where you can go on and download the app either on your own, there's patients links, or through your hearing healthcare provider. And I included an example of Cochlear Copilot. The different hearing aid companies, the cochlear implant manufacturers will have their own proprietary apps as well that you can access these features on. And so again, technology, just like with everything else, works best when it fits your life. And so the best app is not always the fanciest one. It's the one that you will actually use when you need it. When you go to your audiologist, you can ask them, are there any apps or phone features that you'd recommend for my specific needs? Even better is to bring your phone to the appointment. Ask them to show you how to use the feature, not just tell you about it. Here we're going to move on to communication repair strategies. So this is what happens after a breakdown has already happened. In other words, something was missed, misunderstood, or it was unclear. So many of us will naturally say, what? Or, huh? What happens when we say what or huh? The person often just repeats back what they said and they don't change anything about the way that they said it. So it doesn't give the talker enough information. They don't know what went wrong, and so they just simply repeat back the exact same sentence in the exact same way. And if it didn't work the first time, it may not work the second time either. So what we want to use instead are more specific repair strategies. So for example, could you say that again, please? Polite and simple. Sometimes you can be more specific and say, could you repeat that last part? This tells the speaker that you got some of the message, but not all of it. Could you slow down a little? Is when the speaker is talking quickly. Please face me when you speak is helpful when the visual access is an issue. And then can you rephrase that is helpful when repeating the same words is not working. You can also use a forced choice where you say, did you say Tuesday or Thursday? Or was that 15 or 50? And this is really helpful for dates, times, names, addresses, and medical information. And so the goal with this is to move from a general repair strategy to a specific repair request. Instead of just saying, I didn't hear you, tell the person what would help. And you don't have to apologize and say, oh, I have hearing loss, I'm sorry. You're entitled to communication. So ask them to repeat, ask them to rephrase, slow down, face me, write it down, or confirm one detail. And this can also help reduce the frustration for the communication partners because then they're not left guessing what to do. So the phrase you can take away from this is ask for the help you actually need. How many of you have been in this situation where it's, I can't hear you, so I'll just laugh and hope it wasn't a question? Where you might nod your head, you might laugh, pretend to hear what was said, and hope that you didn't miss anything. And we want you, as part of AR, to be assertive. We want you to advocate for yourself. This means letting other people know what helps you communicate. And it can be uncomfortable at first to do this. You may not want to interrupt. You may not want to draw attention to your hearing loss. You may not want to feel like you're inconveniencing others. But when we think about self-advocacy, it's not about being difficult, right? It's not about apologizing for it. It's giving other people the information they need to communicate with you successfully. As we said, be specific. So instead of saying, I can't hear, you could say, I understand better when I can see your face. Or could we turn down the TV while we talk? Another key is to ask early. It's often easier to ask with a small request at the beginning than to wait until you are already frustrated, tired, or lost somewhere in the conversation. You can also explain that hearing loss affects clarity, not just volume. So many people think that hearing loss just means that everything is too quiet. So they respond by shouting. But for many people with hearing loss, the issue is not just loudness. The issue is that the speech is unclear. It's that Charlie Brown teacher voice, the wah, 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 where the background noise or maybe the speaker is not facing them. And so having some simple scripts can help. So I have hearing loss. I do best when I can see your face. I want to make sure I understood. Did you say 2:30? Could you write that down for me? These are small phrases, but they can make a big difference. And these are the little buttons that you might have seen through your chapter here as well, where you can have that on you just as a visual reminder for, let's say, the cashier that you're speaking to. And it's not about demanding special treatment. It's about creating the conditions for successful communication. So it's very important to work on this. And the more you practice them, the more natural it'll be. This next example here is one of the things that we can do as part of AR. A really simple task, it seems like, but it can be quite challenging where you think of that difficult listening situation that I asked you to think about before, and you come up with, say, 15 things, 15 strategies that you can do. So in this case, if we use the example of ordering at the drive-thru, there's background noise from cars, there's engines, there's traffic, the outdoor like speaker quality could be poor. You can't see the person's face. The employee might be talking too quickly. You might feel pressure if there's a long line of cars behind you. You might be trying to order different sizes and drinks and substitutions and prices and confirmation questions. So you can think about different strategies that you could brainstorm to use. So like looking at the menu ahead of time, using the restaurant's mobile app to order in advance, going inside instead of using the drive-through. Ask a person in the car with you to help. Writing down your order, going straight to the window instead of ordering at the speaker, asking the employee to repeat what they said. Sometimes it comes up on the screen. And you can also use the same strategies we talked about, telling the employee, I have trouble hearing through the speaker. Could you please speak slowly? Or could you repeat that? Otherwise, you can pull forward and clarify at the window. The purpose of doing something like this as an example is to show that these strategies are really situation specific. And again, going back to what are the difficulties and what can be changed about it can help. And this is a really nice exercise for you all to do even as a chapter where you can crowdsource different difficult listening situations and then have each other contribute strategies so you can learn from each other and maybe pick up some tools or some tips from others who have been in that situation before. I'm next going to introduce lip reading, which is another part of AR. So with lip reading, as we've been talking a little bit about and setting up the meeting for today, you're using what on the speaker's lips to help understand speech. We can use the whole face, the facial expressions, gestures, body language, context. There is an alternative term called speech reading, where we use not just visual information, but also what we can hear. So the visual cues are really important. People with hearing loss already are lip reading, maybe without even realizing it. So you, for example, might notice that you understand better when someone faces you, or you struggle more on the phone because you can't see the speaker. In the pandemic, we all saw masks and face coverings, or when you go to your doctor's office and people are wearing the masks, communication is difficult because you're removing access to the mouth and a lot of the face. And so lip reading is not some magic skill where you see every word perfectly. It's helpful, but it also has its limits. Under ideal conditions, it's only about 30 to 40% of the speech sounds that we can see through visual conditions alone. And that is with good lighting, a clear view of the face, familiar language, and a cooperative speaker. Some sounds are going to be easier than others. So, for example, P, B, M are visible because the lips come together. Sounds like F and V are visible because your upper teeth are touching your lower lip. But other sounds are not so easy to see. So if you think about a K, a K sound, that's happening farther back in your mouth, and so it's less visible than a P sound. Some sounds also look very similar on the lips. So that means that even those who are very skilled at lip reading cannot see every sound clearly. And that's where context becomes really important. So if I say 3 strikes and you can probably predict the word is going to be out. You don't need every sound because that phrase is familiar. But if I were to say an unfamiliar name, a medication, a street address, the context may not help as much. So anything that's less predictable is going to cause more difficulty. You can miss one digit in a phone number and the whole message could be wrong. So lip reading is useful, but don't expect perfection. It is another tool in your AR toolbox. And it works best when it's paired with clear speech, good lighting, context, and the repair strategies that we've covered. If you try lip reading and find it difficult, that doesn't mean that you're bad at it. It just means that you're using a challenging skill that's going to take some practice and support. So we're going to do a little bit of practice with lip reading or speech reading. And so we're going to start small, starting with some sounds and then filling in with the context around us. Make sure you're relaxed. It's easier said than done, I know, but stress makes lip reading and listening harder. So if you're tense or tired or embarrassed, your brain has more to manage. And so hopefully we're going to have a calm practice session here than a high pressure one. When you are lip reading, focus on me. I'm the speaker here. Look at my whole face, not just my lips. So my facial expressions, my eyebrows, my gestures, all at the same time, try to reduce any other distractions. So don't look at your phone, don't look at the TV, don't look at other people around you. Don't be hard on yourself. It's a skill. Like any skill, that takes practice. So you're not going to get everything. Nobody's going to get everything. The goal is not to become perfect. We're just adding another source of information that can be used to support communication. Practice. Practice is the last thing. Practice with someone who's familiar to you. Ask them to say some simple words or phrases while they face you. Start off with some short sentences with context. You can also practice while watching videos with the captions on and off. So lip reading, we're going to present here as a support, not a test. Okay, so some examples here. So we have P, B, and M. If you say those sounds to yourself, P, B, M, you should feel your lips come together. For F and V, you should see the upper teeth coming over your bottom lip. So we'll say those again. P, B, M, F, and V. So you can kind of feel that difference on your own. So we're going to start with these 3 words. I am going to say them in any order. Watch what happens when I say pie, buy, and my. So you're going to see my lips coming together, closing, and then opening. So I'm going to say these silently. Now, the tricky part is that those should all look very similar. That's why lip reading on its own is not enough. So I want you to look at someone next to you for those of you in the room, and those of you on Zoom can look at me. And I want you to say those three words in any order to see if the person next to you can guess what that order is of those three words. So the order in which I said those was by, my, pie. And it's really hard because they all look very similar on the lips. Now I'm going to put it with some context and you'll see how we can benefit from that. So I'm going to say this sentence aloud, and then for the word that goes in the blank, I'm going to lip read it. So the words again, by, pie, or my. I took the blueberry out of the oven. So we know that the word pie makes sense based on the context, and you saw my lips coming together for pie, and we know that pie would be the one that makes the most sense based on the context. Here we have F and V. So if you say the words leaf and leave, say those silently, and you can watch me. So again, I said leave, leaf. You can say those in any order, but they look the same. And you see the upper teeth coming over your lower lip. Same with words like fan and van. They look similar to each other, but they look different than the P, B, and M sounds. So again, with lip reading, we're gathering clues here. So I'm going to say a word, either leaf or leave, and we're going to practice this sentence. So a yellow just fell out of that tree. So based on the context, we know that is leaf, not leave, even though they look and even sound very similar. So having that context of seeing leave come together with the upper teeth over your bottom lip can help. Another practice sentence for you. The new homeowners bought a welcome for their front door. Did you hear as that word lip reading pulled up one finger for pat, two for mat, or three fingers for bat? The new homeowners bought a welcome for their front door. Yep, Marlene, I see that. Yes, very good. Yeah, so it's mat. We use the context there to fill in the gap. Another one. So I am in the HLAA Diablo chapter. I am in the HLAA Diablo chapter. Context, you know that valley would be the next word to come. But you can see when I said valley, that V sound at the beginning to help give you context to know what the word is. And then another strategy that we're going to introduce here last is clear speech. So clear speech is a manner of speaking in which the speaker is making a concerted effort to precisely and accurately express each word, sentence, and idea. Basically, it helps make the message easier to understand. Now, you might be thinking, why are we learning this? Because we need others to speak like this to us. But it is important to know this for modeling reasons. This is what journalists, people in aviation, broadcast journalism will use because it helps make sure that the speech signal is understood. So you're deliberately speaking clearly, accurately, and with good pacing, not an unnatural or an exaggerated way. When you have hearing loss, you only can receive maybe part of the speech signal. And as we saw with lip reading, some speech sounds are less clear to see. especially in those high frequency, those sounds like S, F, TH, SH. They carry an important amount of speech information, and they're especially difficult. And so when sounds are filtered out because of hearing loss or background noise, or they're unclear, you have to fill in the gaps. So when we use clear speech, it gives you a better signal to work with. Now, in our everyday communication, we don't speak as clearly as we think we do. We tend to blur sounds together. We drop sounds. We talk quickly. You might have neighboring words that run into each other. So, for example, did you eat yet may become, did you eat yet? And that could be understandable maybe in a quiet room with normal hearing, but it can be much harder with having hearing loss. And so clear speech can help make those word boundaries and speech sounds much easier to perceive. So the speaker is going to slow down, articulate more carefully, pause between phrases, and face the listener. So this is something that your communication partners can do, and it shifts some of that responsibility away from you with hearing loss and makes that communication more shared. You should not have to do all the work. Clear speech is one of the way that your family members, your friends, your healthcare providers can help make communication easier and more respectful. Pronounce the words fully and clearly. Don't overdo it. Don't exaggerate. Avoid mumbling or blending sounds together. Speak more slowly. Now, that does not mean speaking painfully slowly. It means slowing down just enough that the listener has time to process the message. Third, you're going to slightly increase the volume. The key word here is slightly. We're not shouting. That can distort speech and make it sound harsh. Could be frustrating or even disrespectful. So a small increase in volume and then a pause between thoughts and phrases. So give the listener some time to process. Separate ideas. So you can think of these examples here. So if you say these two sentences out loud, as if you were going to say them conversationally, she left for the store on a bus and the kids are swimming in the pool. They might sound something like this. She left for the store on a bus. The kids are swimming in the pool. That's a less clear version. Everything runs together. When we want to use clear speech, we're going to change that where we would emphasize those key words and add pauses. So the words are the same, but the second version here is easier to follow. She left for the store on a bus. The other sentence, the kids are swimming in the pool. The kids are swimming in the pool. And you notice that the last word in both sentences is bolded. It's emphasized because we tend to trail off at the end of our sentences. So when you're putting in requests for this, you could say, could you say that more clearly? Or could you please slow down a little bit? Again, specific request, telling the speaker what to change. So I want you to think about this sentence. You're going to hear and feel the difference for how this is. And you can do this as part of your individual practice for those of you on Zoom here or those of you in the main room. To bake the cake, you will need eggs and butter. So say that using clear speech. So slow down slightly, articulate the words, pause, slightly increase your volume, and don't shout. So go ahead and just take a few seconds and say those sentences to yourself with clear speech. Okay, next one. Tongue twister. A flea and a fly flew up and a flew. Let's try that one. So the purpose of this is not to make you feel self-conscious about how you're speaking, but to show that just small changes can reduce some of that effort that we tend to feel. All right, and the last part here for what we're going to end with today is the end cap to what AR involves. So with AR, I want you to leave knowing what to ask your audiologist. So many people go to your appointment focused on your hearing test or your hearing instruments. Those are important, but your audiologist can also help you think of those real life communication challenges. So asking, what can I realistically expect from my hearing aids or cochlear implant? Making sure expectations are clear. Remember that the hearing devices can help a lot, but they may not make every situation easy. Asking if the devices are programmed for the situations you actually struggle with. The restaurants, the phone calls, church, television. If your audiologist knows where you struggle, then they can suggest accessories or adjust settings. You can ask what strategies would help you the most. That's going to help with opening the door to AR. Another good question, would assistive technology help me? That could include a remote microphone, a TV streamer, captioned phone, a hearing loop, or one of the smartphone apps that we talked about. I'd also recommend asking if you can bring a family member to the appointment. Family involvement can be really valuable. It doesn't have to be a family member per se, but rather a communication partner who can hear directly from the audiologist about what helps and what does not help. You can also ask if there are any listening practice tools or auditory training programs that you could try. You all are part of this chapter here, but any other support groups, classes, or community resources you could recommend. And the most important question to think about asking your audiologist is, what else can help me communicate better besides my hearing devices? And that's what we want to take away from the purpose of AR. This is just an example here of a listening journal before we end, which is just a simple tool that you can use before your next audiology appointment. It doesn't have to be complicated. You're just keeping track of the situations where communication is difficult and what you notice. So, for example, it could be you were at the restaurant with family, you could hear the voices, but couldn't understand the server clearly. What did you do? You sat in a booth against a wall. Maybe then asking your audiologist, should I use a special setting or program? The listening journal can help you notice any patterns, and it gives your audiologist specific information. So instead of just, oh, yeah, I'm doing okay, you're keeping a track of what those individual situations are. And that's really helpful for your audiologist to know so they have something concrete to work with. Not documenting every problem, but instead bringing 2 to 3 real life examples to your appointment can help with recommendations. So to end here, today we talked about AR or aural rehabilitation as a practical approach to living and communicating with hearing loss. Remember that hearing healthcare is beyond just your hearing devices. Communication depends on the speaker, the listener, the message, and the environment. We talked about strategies like choosing quieter places, sitting where you can see faces. We talked about repair strategies, being specific and asking for exactly what you need. We talked about self-advocacy, asking early, letting people know that hearing loss often affects clarity, not just volume. We did some instruction with lip reading. The visual cues can help, and also clear speech. Remember to ask your audiologist about AR. So what else can help me better? Maybe that's looking at some of the apps that come with your devices. And remember that the best app is the one that you are going to use. As we leave today, I really encourage you to think of one strategy that you want to try next week. So it doesn't have to be a big change, but maybe you ask someone to face you. Maybe you try out a new app. Maybe you choose a quieter table at the restaurant. Maybe you write down a listening challenge for your audiologist for your next appointment. But I really want to emphasize that these small changes you can make can help communication feel a lot more manageable, less fatiguing, and also more successful. I want to thank you all for listening, and I'll take any questions. I don't know where we are in terms of time, but if there are any questions, I can facilitate that.
Thanks, Laura. That was really a great presentation. And fortunately, toward the end, I saw a little pop-up and I was able to make your slides larger on my side.
Oh,
I've never seen that before. So I'll
perfect.
talk to you later about that.
Okay.
So we have questions that may be available from Zoom and also questions from the audience. So does anybody in the audience have a question for Laura?
I can stop sharing my screen, maybe. You can see me better.
When someone is wearing a mask, is it sometimes impolite to ask them to remove the mask? What do you do?
Yes, that is a good question. And I think we saw this really during the pandemic where it was considered rude or impolite to say, "Can you remove your mask?" because it was very sensitive. I think it would depend on the context. If you're in your doctor's office, for example, and you're asking maybe the nurse to remove the mask, you're not there because you're sick, let's say. Maybe you just are there for an annual visit, then that risk you could certainly mitigate by saying, "Oh, could you lower your mask? It helps me to be able to see your face."
Okay.
I think where you can make a difference is if you say why, rather than just, "Oh, could you lower your mask, please?" If you say, "Seeing your face will help me to be able to hear better," for example, it's not just like a blanket request that doesn't have any reason or wondering if someone is sick or are nervous that you're going to get exposed to something. But you have some distance around you. You can use a remote microphone as well. But I think giving some context for why that request can help it go across a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions in the room here? Wow, Laura, you did a really good job. We have a question on Zoom?
Yeah, Bruce?
Hi there. Let's see. The 7 worst words in the English language. I don't need this microphone, do I?
Mm.
Happy speaker starts with that, and I'm out there waving my hands. Anyway, but what I'm going to talk about on the radio. Okay, TV is captioned mostly. Radio is not captioned, and you have radio announcers who cannot talk. When I worked in radio, which is a great job for a guy who's deaf, but anyway, they only hired people who could talk really nice, really great, like Walter Cronkite. They were all nice, eloquent, good speakers. But now you got guys who talk so fast or can't announce or whatever, and you can't understand them on the radio. And it drives me berserk. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Are
So
you listening? Oh, yeah. Are you listening to the radio? Is this in the car or at home?
both.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know when I still listen to the radio, I think I'm probably a poor example of a millennial because I listen to the radio in the car too. And even as having typical hearing, the road noise, the quality sometimes of the signal, it definitely makes a difference. What I have found to be helpful actually is one of my favorite radio programs, like a talk radio. They have a podcast version of the radio show that has the captions in it. So I can wait until it is downloaded on my phone and then get the podcast version of that radio show. And then in the car, I might listen to something else instead. I don't know if you tried any of those depending on what you're listening to, but that might be something else to consider.
Yeah, there's one trick I do. I play a podcast back on the computer, and actually Windows 11 can has a function where you can caption anything that comes through the audio system. So you can play
Yeah.
back the podcast and have captioned podcasts, even if they don't caption it.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely think like the technology side is really promoting that captioning. One of the things that being in education is that young people, like we think of the Gen Z, the maybe the people in their 20s, really are really loving captioning because you can watch your TikToks and your videos without the audio on. And to the point where they won't even sometimes watch a video if it doesn't have captions. So I think a lot of the online content that we're seeing, and like you said, with the accessibility features, others who don't have hearing loss are benefiting from those. And so, yeah, it's really great to see that you've been able to discover that on your Windows device too.
One other problem I ran into, I was in a doctor's waiting room a few weeks ago, and they called my name. I thought I didn't know. I didn't know they called my name. That's what the problem was. So I'm sitting there 20 minutes, and finally I go up to the receptionist and says, "I've been here 20 minutes. What's going on? We called you 10 minutes ago." She has an accent. She's behind a glass window.
Mm.
Yeah, right. Sure, I can hear you. There's no training these people in the right way to interact with the public, whether they're hearing impaired or not.
Yes. And I think, and we have this bit of a joke because when you go to the audiologist, they'll also call you. And so one of the things that is a strategy that you could try is when you go to check in, let them know that you'd like to make sure that someone comes and actually gets you instead of just calling your name and then you're sitting there for 20 minutes waiting for that. And sometimes with the waiting room, depending on the configuration of the seats, you may not even know that someone has come out to call your name even. Yes, that's something you could try, but I'm sorry you had to sit there for that long, not realizing that they were trying to get your attention.
Well, Bruce, unfortunately, that's happened to probably everybody in the room here. I even tell everybody, please describe what I have on. I usually wear bright jewelry. I have glasses. It never seems to work. I don't understand this. There's a mental block about that. So are there any other questions on Zoom? And are there any other questions in the room? Sometimes people talk and it sparks something else. So Laura, thank you. Thank you. This was just wonderful. It's nice to see you. You gave a really well-rounded presentation. I'm sure it helped a lot of people in the room. Oh,
Good.
people in the room are putting thumbs up.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback. Yeah,
Thanks very
thank you.
much. And are you going to be at the walk?
No, I won't. It's our
Oh, I'm sorry I won't see you.
yeah, we've got this is the last couple weeks of the semester. So we're busy with graduation and finishing up our students. But yeah, I hope it's really nice weather for you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Anne.